Hey guys, so today we're gonna do a different approach. As you can see, I'm hands-free. Brought Joey with me to follow me along the next 3 days and film some poker, etc. Matter of fact, here's an introduction to a man who doesn't want to be introduced. That's too bad.
Hi guys.
This is Joey.
Man.
Anyway, as I was saying, 3 days of poker coming up. The first is here at the Bicycle Casino. I'm gonna be playing 25-50 on stream. Tomorrow we're playing at the Hustler, and Friday also Hustler, 100, 200. So a lot of high stakes games coming up, and it's gonna be a different approach. This video might be like way longer than the other ones and definitely different, so I hope you guys enjoy. But with that being said, let's head inside and play some cards. Enough talking, hopefully we win some money.
What are we doing now, Mariano?
We're getting money. We're getting chips. Don't try to rob me because I don't ever have money. It's in there. Alright, currently reporting from my couch here in Beaumont to recap the last 3 days of poker with you guys. There's been a lot going on across the 3 live streams, so I figured if we just have a sit down, it'd be easier for you guys to keep track across this strange video that we're putting together. So, we're going to start things off with day 1, which is 25-50 no limit at the Bicycle Casino. I sit down with $30,000, and in the first interesting hand, Dr. H opens in late position to 150. AJ 3-bets on the button, and then it's on me with Ace King. Pretty powerful cards, so I think it's worthy of my own raise. That's what I do, but then Dr. H gives me the bad news as he re-raises once again. AJ folds, now it's back on me, and although Ace King is a very powerful hand and a very good one at that, I'm not entirely sure that against this particular opponent in this situation, putting the chips in is the best idea, so after weighing all my options, I decide to give him credit and just let it go. Thank God I did, because I later found out he had pocket aces, so we avoid disaster that time. Anyway, with that we move to the second hand where I get 8-6 of hearts. Once again, this one is against Dr. H. I raise it up in late position. Dr. H 3-bets from the blinds, and with a hand like this, I think it's okay to call, so that's what I do. And we go to a decent flop of Queen 10-8. We've got bottom pair. Unfortunately, there's no heart out there, so not much else aside from that, but still could have the best hand often enough to call one small c-bet, which is what I do, and we go to a turn which is the 5 of diamonds. This time he slows down and checks, and now we have a decision between betting or checking back. With my particular hand, I think both are probably fine, but I decide to check it back and see what happens on the river, and immediately regret it as we get a third 8 on the river. So we have 3 of a kind now. And even better news is that Dr. H continues betting, now 1700. Given how he's played his hand, I feel like he's either got a bluff or something not very strong, maybe like pocket jacks or middle pair, you know, hands of that nature. So I definitely want to raise, but in terms of sizing, I don't really think a big size makes the most sense. I do end up raising to 6,000, which in retrospect I think was too large, but as you guys can see, it made no difference either way as Dr. H actually has 4 high. So credit to him for playing his hand in that fashion. Unfortunately, I ended up making a pretty strong hand myself, so it doesn't work out for him, and we take that one down. With that, we move to the most interesting hand of the night. You guys are gonna have to excuse the graphics pre-flop. They're a little bit sloppy, but bear with me. In this one, the $100 straddle is on. Jay opens to 300, and then Swan on his left makes it 900. I'm next to act looking down at ace 9 suited. With all this action ahead of me, I think just letting my cards go is totally fine, but I do think that occasionally mixing in hands like these for another raise is a good idea. Just to, you know, stay a little bit unpredictable when we have hands like aces and kings and whatnot. So I do decide to go for it this time. I make it 2,200. Now action gets to Alex in the big blind. Looks like he's got a decision to make. Obviously not good for me. If he's putting chips in even after all this action in front of him, He's most likely got me beat, but he ends up deciding to just call for over half his stack. So not entirely sure what was up with that, but the chips are in there. It gets back to Jay in early position. He calls and Schwan calls as well. So 4 of us going to a flop in this 4-bet pot, which comes down pretty decent for my exact hand. It's 10-6 deuce with 2 clubs. So we flop an overcard and the nut flush draw most importantly. However, when the action checks to me, I'm not entirely sure that betting in this situation will accomplish much. Seems very likely that we're in bad shape against at least one of these guys, and I'm not expecting to get a ton of folds on this sort of board. So I just check it back and realize my equity, and it's a good turn card. The Queen of Clubs, giving me the absolute best possible hand in pretty much the dream situation with 3 other opponents still in the pot. Even better news is that now Alex announces all in for, I believe it was around 3,700. Unfortunately, the other 2 players fold. Would have loved to see them put some money in there, but obviously when it gets to me, nothing to do but put the chips in. I show Alex my hand and he actually has pocket queens, so we're definitely not out of the woods yet. He asked to run it twice, and when it comes to that sort of stuff, I really don't mind. There's no advantage or disadvantage to running it once or multiple times. All it does is increase or reduce variance. So even if he showed me like bottom 2 pair, or if he somehow had a better hand than me, the decision isn't really based on that. But anyway, with that out of the way, I let him know it's totally fine to run it twice if he wants. And we end up chopping as we hold on the first board, but he makes a full house on the second board. So a pretty big pot, but really not too drastic of a result. Obviously, looking back, I wish I ran it once, but the river cards could have easily been interchanged, and yeah, you know how that goes. But anyway, that was the last interesting hand I played on stream. However, Joey was gracious enough to capture one more fun one that happened post-stream. The game did continue for a while, but obviously the cameras are shut off, so here we go. In this one, Dr. H opens. I can't remember if anyone called his raise, but it got to me in the big blind, I believe, and I have Ace-Jack offsuit. I raise with Ace-Jack offsuit, Dr. H calls in position, and we go heads up to a flop of 9-7 deuce with 2 clubs. I do have the Ace of Clubs, so we do have some backdoor possibilities in terms of representing flushes, and we have 2 overcards, and you know, we could also have a bunch of strong hands. So with all that in mind, I continue with a bet of $3,000. Dr. H is undeterred, and he makes the call. So we're looking for some help on the turn, and we don't really get that. It's the Queen of Spades, bringing a second flush draw. However, it does introduce an overcard if he has a hand like any 9 or a middling pocket pair that calls with flop. Not giving me credit just yet. So with all these things in mind, and like I said, still with the possibility of representing hands on certain river cards, I think it's okay to continue applying pressure. The only tricky thing is he doesn't have a ton left behind, so I elect to bet relatively small here, 4,500. Obviously still a bunch of money, but you know, compared to the size of the pot. Once again, he makes the call, so definitely looking for some help now. And yet again, we don't get it, but it is a card that I think we can possibly still win this hand on, and that's the 7 of clubs. Pairing the board and introducing a possible flush. Sure, he can sometimes have flush draws, but for the most part, I think he's gonna have hands that are gonna hate this river card. And you know, I've got the Ace of Clubs, so I can pretend I've got it, right? So he's got around 16,000 left in his stack. Nothing to do at this point but rip it all in there. That's what I do, and thankfully we don't get snap called. Anyway, at this point, nothing to do but just cross my fingers and pray that he folds. Sadly, he doesn't make it too simple for us, as it does take him about a minute or two, but he does eventually decide to fold. So a great result for us, and we get away with this one.
It's funny because I was like by far the most interesting hand of the day, and it's like the second that you come over and start filming. Besides that, it's just been like crickets all day long.
Have a good night.
Have a go.
I won 3,700.
Nice.
37.25. For that game, it's like break even.
Did you put this in
imagine my player being first. Yeah. Okay, so day one is in the books. I ended up winning 37-25. Not too bad for a 25-50, 100 game. But hopefully tomorrow and Friday go a little bit better. If they go a lot worse, at least it'll be content. Anyway, on to tomorrow. So they gave us these really cool media passes at Hustler. Means you can film anything, anyone, anywhere. Joey's pretty excited about it. And oh yeah, there's they put my face on the wall. Not the best photo, but it's pretty cool nonetheless. Anyway, Joey's excited about these. I'm excited to play some 5-5 100 today. Let's go. We need money. Money. $100,000. Bring double? You want me to bring double that back? I'm playing 5-5. Okay, I'll do my best. It's like, I don't think anyone's ever won 100K in this game that I play.
Yet.
Impossible, dude. How much cash did you bring?
None. I'm gonna take it out of the ATM.
I'm gonna double this. I'm going to blackjack right now. Alright guys, thank you. Double it up, Joey.
All right.
If you lose that,
I'm never seeing it again.
if you lose that, you're gonna owe me. So today we're playing 5-5 with 100 ante. And tomorrow we're playing 100-200, which is way too big. So the plan is to minimize loss today. That way tomorrow I'm in a good mental state. Fair enough, Joey? What do you think?
No, you're doubling up today.
Doubling up.
You here?
Dude, she says that every time, and I haven't done it once.
So on this day, we're playing 5-5 no limit with a $100 big blind ante. All that means is that the blinds are 5-5 and the big blind puts $100 into the pot each hand. As far as I'm concerned, not really a huge fan of this structure. I'd rather play something more normal like 50-100 or whatever, but at the same time, I am a fan of introducing things into the game that not everyone's used to, and this definitely counts. So, you know, I see the merit for it. But anyway, with that nerdy talk out of the way, I sit down with $50,000 and we're gonna get into the first interesting hand where Nick Vertucci opens to $300. Dustin calls on his left and I'm next to act, or rather 2 players later left to act, and I look down at 8-7 of diamonds. I think this hand is worthy of calling, but I prefer raising to force the other players out and try to get this one heads up. So that's what I do, and Nick ends up folding. However, Dustin comes along for the ride, and we go to an amazing flop of Jack 9-3 with 2 diamonds. In general, not a board that's going to favor me a whole lot more than Dustin, I think, but let's face it, I've got a straight draw and a flush draw, so when he checks, I see no reason not to continue betting. I put in $2,200. This is where the hand gets a little bit interesting, as Dustin puts in more than $2,200, but not enough to count as a full raise. So I'm not even entirely sure if he meant to raise, but he does end up raising to 4,400, which is the absolute minimum. I see no reason to do anything but call, so that's what I do. And we go to a turn which sadly brings no help. It's the 4 of clubs. But the good thing is that now he checks it over to me again. Now with 8 high and a dream, I see no option other than applying the pressure and taking the bet and lead once again. So that's what I do with a $9,000 bet. And I'm happy to report he ends up folding 10-8 for an open-ended straight draw. Now, obviously it's no major accomplishment getting a fold from 10 high, but hey, we were technically behind with 8 high, so I'll take it. In the next interesting hand, I'm in the $200 straddle. There's 2 limpers, and I check my option with 5 deuce offsuit. Not really amazing cards or anything, but things are looking up when we go to a flop of 5-4 deuce with 2 spades. So we flop 2 pair on a pretty draw heavy board. I start off with a check and it ends up checking around. The turn is even better. The deuce of clubs bringing a second flush draw and obviously giving me a full house. This time I bet small, $300, and only Mike ends up calling. So just 2 of us going to a river, which is a great one, the 3 of hearts. I think this card is going to give Mike a lot of straights, and if it doesn't, he'll probably bluff missed flush draws. So for that reason, I decide to check it over to him and see what he wants to do. And luckily, he does put in some money to the tune of $1,200. Now, I've got a full house, and I'm just going to target hands like any 6 or perhaps an ace. Maybe he even has a smaller full house, if that's even possible with me having all these cards locked up. But anyway, I kick it up to $6,000, and I'm happy to see he does not snap fold. So looking like a missed flush draw isn't what he has. After a little bit, he decides to call. So that's very good news. And it turns out he had ace deuce for the bottom straight and some removal to a full house. So I guess I understand his call. This one's going our way and things are looking up. In the next interesting one, there's a late position open to 300. And it looks like I'm on a good run for sure now because I'm next to act on the button with pocket kings. Obviously, one of the most amazing hands you can get dealt, so I'm gonna raise it up to $1,000. But interestingly enough, the small blind is not interested in my $1,000 raise and makes it $3,000. Initial raiser folds and now it's back on me. Now, 2 things are happening here. Number 1, we're in late position, so I wouldn't be surprised if this guy is raising a little bit light, but contradictory information is that this particular player didn't really seem like the type to bluff for no reason. I actually do think he's got a strong hand, so I decided that instead of just ripping it all in, I'm gonna call and go to a flop. Queen 8-3 is definitely not my favorite one, as now we're also losing to pocket queens, but he decides to bet $7,000, which is a little over the size of the pot. And at this point, I discount pocket queens altogether. I can't see anyone, and especially this player, betting the size of the pot with top set. He'd most likely bet small or check and hope that I put in some money. So at this point, I think we're up against either pocket aces or a bluff like ace king, or maybe just a hand like jacks that decides he's going with it no matter what. Not very likely, but we can't pretend we haven't seen people do that before. So with all that in mind, I decide to make the call and go to a turn. 9 of clubs shouldn't really change anything. At this point, he's only got around half pot left behind. He rips it in there, and like I said, we're losing to aces, but beat essentially anything else that he could be playing in this fashion. Of course, as you guys can see the cards, it's an easy fold for me, but in the moment, I'm not sure how this guy plays or what he's got, so I put in the money, especially getting a good price, and sadly get the bad news as he shows me pocket aces. We can still get lucky on the river, but that doesn't happen, and we end up losing a really big pot after winning a few hands early on, and now we're back in the negative. In the next one, Mike opens to 300, and then Nick re-raises in late position to 900. I'm in the small blind with pocket 9s, and I think 2 options are on the table here. Putting in another raise is probably fine, but cold calling is also an option. I don't really think Mike is going to take advantage of this often enough, and it wouldn't really be too bad to take my particular hand 3 ways. So I do end up cold calling, and sure enough, Mike comes along. So we go to a flop, which is very nice. 9-8-5 with 2 diamonds, giving me top set in this multi-raised pot. I consider leading on a board like this. I feel like I can get away with a bunch of hands, but I decide to check, and action checks around. The turn is even better news. It's another 5, giving me top full house. However, I think checking again has more merit than betting. This allows Mike to stab with any sort of draw or bluff, and if he's got a hand that he wants to value bet, he can do the same. So I do check it over to him, and sure enough, he bets, but it's only $300, really small compared to the size of the pot. Nick folds, and now it's back to me. Definitely going for a raise now, so I kick it up to 1800. Looking back, I feel like I could have gone even bigger, but anyway, 1800 it is, and he does make the call. The river is once again a very good one. The 3 of diamonds. This does introduce a possible flush, which is something he could easily have after the hands play the way it has. And for that reason, I decide to check, targeting flushes, smaller full houses, or just bluffs. All these hands are going to bet the river, and we can go for a big check raise. So that's what I do, and music to my ears, he announces a bet of $7,000. He's only got around 21,000 after this bet. Nothing to do for me but go all in, so that's what I do. Sadly, we don't get the snap call, which is what I was hoping for if he had a hand like pocket 8s or perhaps a 5. But he doesn't fold right away either, so I'm not really entirely sure what he has. Maybe he's got like a small flush. Would be a pretty nasty spot with a hand like that. As y'all can see, he's only got an 8, so you've got to give me like absolutely no credit to call with that hand. And sure enough, he does end up eventually folding. So we don't win a ton, but still happy to take it down. A few rounds later, I open the button with King 6 suited to 300. And get raised by Mergy on my left once again. He's in the small blind and kicks it up to $1,000. With a suited king, I think calling is definitely fine, and occasionally raising seems appropriate as well, but this time I do just decide to call in position, and we go to a flop of Ace Jack 5 with 1 spade. I've got a backdoor flush draw, that's about it, but when he bets $1,000, after watching him play for a while, I don't think he's super strong. He'd been betting really big whenever he has a hand he likes, so I decide to float and see what happens on the turn. And we find some help with the 5 of spades, giving me a flush draw, and I guess I could have a 5 once in a blue moon as well. And it seems my suspicions that he doesn't have a super strong hand are confirmed because he bets $1,000 again. I mean, sure, he could be doing this with a really strong hand, just trying to keep me in there, but what I think is more likely is that he's not too comfortable with his holding and he's block betting to avoid my aggression. So I do think raising has merit, since I guess I could have a 5 once in a while, but I decide to just call again with some evil intentions on the river, and of course we could also improve to a flush. However, that doesn't end up happening. It's the 4 of clubs, so now I've got king high, but my opponent does check it over to me. I'm not going to go a whole lot into the details of this exact bet, but bottom line is, if I have a bunch of hands that I'm willing to bluff with, I'm going to be betting really big. And I'm also representing either a really strong hand or nothing at all, which obviously is what I have in this instance, nothing at all. With that in mind, I bet double the size of the pot, $12,000 into $6,000, and we do end up getting a fold from pocket 9s, so happy with the result. With that, we move to the hand of the night for this particular session. In this one, the $200 straddle is on. Mike opens first to act to 800, and I'm next to act with pocket queens. Since he's opening from first position, I do think he has a strong hand, but obviously with a hand as strong as mine, I'm going to put in another raise of my own, so I make it 2,200. Interestingly enough, action gets to Francisco on the button, and he cold calls my 2,200. Then it gets back around to Mike, who announces all in for around $13,000 or $14,000. Not really a very comfortable situation for me. Of course, I've got a very strong hand, so folding seems kind of ridiculous, but at the same time, I only think he's doing this with hands like ace, king, aces, and kings. We're not in great shape against those holdings. That being said, Mike had been having a somewhat frustrating session, so I guess he could be doing it with hands like jacks or 10s, just deciding that screw it, it's going in there. However, now that gives me a decision between just calling or raising again. If I call, I'm giving Francisco a price to call again. If I raise, I could fold out Francisco's holdings, but I don't really think I want to do that, because if he had a hand better than me, he probably would have raised me on his own. So I think there is merit to just calling and letting Francisco in the pot with what I presume is a worse hand than mine. So after some thought, I do make the call. And this is where the hand gets really weird, as Francisco back jams for an additional $32,000 or $33,000. This is just between me and Francisco now, since he covers Mike. I do cover Francisco, so essentially it's an all-in versus only me at this point. And I waste pretty much no time before putting in the call. Like I said, if he had a better hand than I do, I probably would have heard about it sooner. So I think he's just going with whatever he's got. I make the call, and as it turns out, Francisco's got ace king, and when I show my queens, Mike says that he needs help as well. So it's obvious now that we've got the best hand. By reflex, I just say let's run it once, but then I realize this pot is over $100,000, so I decide to instead ask if we can run it twice. Francisco agrees and is totally down with it. Like I said, there's no advantage or disadvantage to this at all. It's just a matter of reducing variance, which I'm happy to do when the pot is 6 figures. Unfortunately, Mike has the MO that he never runs it more than once, which is totally understandable. People have their own rules and I totally respect that. So once it is, we're going 3 ways to a flop, turn, and river with over $100,000 in the middle. Flop looks great, it's all low cards. However, the turn brings a sweat as it's a 3rd heart. I take a look over at Francisco's hand and he does have the king of hearts, which is pretty concerning, but I do have the queen of hearts myself, and you know, luck is still on our side, and so is the probability, as we're around 70 or 80% at this point. I don't know the exact math, but none of that matters when the river comes, the 7 of hearts. Breaking my heart and giving this pot to Francisco. Honestly, I was in a lot of pain after this one, especially so because last time that I was on stream, things didn't go very well for me. I feel like I ran really bad, so this particular hand felt like it was going to be the turnaround point, but instead it was more of the same. That being said, it's hard to be mad when you lose a hand versus Francisco. He's one of the cooler guys I've ever played with, and so is Mike, so at least it's with some cool players, and the show goes on, even though we are now stuck around $50,000. In the next super enjoyable hand of Texas Hold'em, Straddle is on, once again $200. I raise it up to $500 with King Queen and get 3 callers. So 4 of us go into a flop of Queen 8-7. Action checks to me, and with top pair against multiple opponents, I think you can make a case for both betting and checking. In fact, I think mixing is probably the best approach. This time I decide to check it, and Mike checks behind. So still 4 of us going to a turn, which is a blank. Random deuce. This time Francisco leads out for $2,400. Gets to me, and already I'm not extremely happy with the situation, just because I don't think he's bluffing. However, we still beat some value hands like a weaker queen, or for example, pocket 9s. So I do make the call, and everyone else folds. Just 2 of us go into a river, which is a 3. Once again, Francisco leads out for $5,000. I don't love it, but what can I do after playing my hand in such an under-rep fashion? I put in the money, and thankfully we beat Queen Jack, so we get a little bit back, but not enough to remedy the previous hand. And this was the last interesting one of this particular session, so this day didn't go very well. I ended up losing around $40,000, and I gotta admit, I was pretty heartbroken with, like I said, the previous downswing last time I was on these streams, but that's just how it goes sometimes.
I lost.
A lot?
Yeah. I lost a big pot against Francisco.
How much?
How much was the pot? Pot was like over 100K. Oh, that's funny, huh, Joey?
You want the other $100 chip?
Yeah, I need that, dude. You down to get food?
Yeah, I'm down.
500, so 3,500. Last hand, yeah, I dusted off. Thanks for
I can't stop thinking about that hand. It would have been so perfect. I would have won like 50K tonight or something, but instead I lost like 40K. Last time I was here, I went on this crazy downswing, and I was so ready to like turn that around this time, and I got in this spot where it would have been cool. But I lost it to this guy that's f***ing awesome. It's like, his name's Francisco, dude. He's so cool. Can't even be mad. That lady cursed me when she was like, you gotta win 100K today. Alright, so I'm gonna call Megan and then we go to the Japanese place. She always makes me feel better.
I had this other hand where like I kind of punted. I had kings against this guy who was obviously not bluffing. And I had like an unfoldable situation. But it was only unfoldable if he could be bluffing, and I knew deep in my heart that he was not bluffing. I just convinced myself, like, you have to call, because what if he's bluffing? I just fucking knew it. I was like, I'm behind, and I put the money in anyway. That was really frustrating. We gotta call Megan.
Hi, Bubba.
Hi, Mama. So, I had another rough day.
Oh, really?
But like not really. It was fine. I just got into this huge pot and it sort of dictated like my entire day and I lost it. But besides that, it was like a straightforward day. Would have been really cool if I won that hand, but long story short, I got all in 3 ways. I had queens and they both had ace king. So it was like it was like a very good situation.
It's a flip?
But it's not a flip. I mean, it is a flip, but it's less than a flip because they both
you're ahead.
Yeah, they have each other's outs, so it's like actually a very good situation.
Then
Anyway,
there was an ace?
No, it was. I mean, I lost. Bottom line, who cares? But if you must know the fashion, it was actually
Against both of them?
against one of them. It was heartbreaking. It was all little cards, but it ended up running out with 4 hearts, and one of them had the king of hearts.
Oh, a flush.
It was fucking. It was so painful on the river as well.
I was like, how do you lose against one of them?
Yeah, it was very, very painful.
Rough.
It was the biggest pot I've ever played on stream, and it was the second biggest pot I've ever played in my life.
Oh gosh.
I think it was like around 100 or 110,000, something like that. Anyway, I ended up losing 40K tonight.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway,
How's your mental state? Are you okay?
I'm doing okay. It's cool that Joey's here. Yeah, we're gonna go get in line right now. But
okay.
I just wanted to touch your base and let you know that that I had a rough night and I'm pissed. How are you? Hang on, let me put our name on the list and I will call you right back.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Okay, so we're at Shinsengumi in Gardena, one of the best Japanese places you could eat. I'll show you guys some of the food.
Dude, look at our line is.
Running bad today. Don't come here.
We gotta say what happened. They ran out of the meat.
Yeah, so we went to this Japanese place because they have these really good, well, they have a lot of good stuff. We waited like an hour to go in there, and then we're about to go in and they inform us that they're sold out of like 80% of their menu, including all the good stuff, so on to somewhere else. I'm so frustrated right now. I told you some shit's gonna pop off, bro. We're in Gardena. Get closer, Joey. This is your job. Risk your life.
Well, who was here? Who's going to knock you out? You want to step outside? Fuck you, man. I'm going to put my position. What's up? I want the curtains to come right now. Yeah, go outside. We'll come out. Who the fuck is this nerd right here?
I feel like we could have done better tonight. That's okay.
I mean, In-N-Out's a staple, you know?
It's a staple, dude.
You can't go wrong with In-N-Out.
I'm tired of gambling.
Right, so here we are at the final day, 3 out of 3, and this is by far what you would call the grand finale. We're playing 100-200 tonight with 2 of the best players in LA, Garrett and Andy. Not only that, but Bill Klein and just a bunch of other important people that are way richer than me. And on top of that, most likely the Straddle is going to be on to 400. So I'm about to play 100, 200, 400, a game that's probably, actually definitely too big for me, but you know, shot taking is important and I want to try it once in a while. So here we are. Let's see how it goes.
So I'm gonna buy in for 50K today. I think, maybe 100, I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm just gonna try to play well. Because if I play well, then I can just sleep at night. No matter what happens, you know? Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you. That was it.
Once again, I choose to sit with $50,000, and in the first interesting hand, the straddle is on to 400, Garrett opens to 1200, and I'm on the button looking down at the best possible start to this night. 2 red aces. Definitely worth a raise, so I make it $4,000. Action folds back around to Garrett, and music to my ears, he announces another raise, this time to $13,200. Based on my experience with Garrett, I think this is a pretty strong hand, especially because I'm re-raising his early position open. So with that in mind, I think both calling or just jamming all in are both on the table. The merit to calling is that we can keep his bluffs in there, but the downside to calling is that if there's a scary board for him, like for example, one with an ace out there, he might slow down and we don't get the max. So after weighing my options, I do decide to jam all in. And what do you know, he calls pretty much right away. So at this point, I think it's clear we're in a cooler situation. As you can see, he ended up having pocket tens, which I was a little surprised by. I felt like he had a slightly stronger hand, but it still seems standard that he ended up calling. Kind of a cooler when you consider how many big blinds and everything. So yeah, we're off to see a flop. So at this point, the question is brought up of how many times we're running it. And I decide 2 times for similar reasons as the prior day. The pot is just really big and I'd like to reduce a little bit of the variance if I can. And not only that, but last time I went all in against Garrett, it was off stream, but he had me in pretty bad shape. I asked to run it twice and he granted me my wish. So feels fair that this time I've got him in bad shape and I give him the same courtesy. Not that this man cares at all, but you know, it's the principle. So we do end up running it twice, and luckily we hold on both boards. So we're off to a very good start as we're up over $50,000 in the first 30 minutes. After that wonderful hand, we come across this one where Andy opens to 500 and I'm next to act with 6-4 of spades. Not really a hand that's strong enough to flat call, although I totally understand doing that. Instead, I think re-raising is best to try to get heads up in position, so I make it 1500 to go. Unfortunately, I don't get what I want, as Bill ends up cold calling out of the straddle, and Andy calls as well. So 3 of us going to a flop, which is pretty decent for my exact holding. It's 7-4 deuce with 1 spade. So we've got some backdoor potentials with the spade and the straights out there. And we've got middle pair, which, you know, there's some removal to sets and such. So when it checks to me, I continue with 1/3 the size of the pot. Bill makes the call, but Andy gets out of the way. At this point, I think it's most likely we don't have the best hand, but I'm not too worried about it since there's a lot of turn cards we can continue applying pressure on, and of course we can always actually improve. The king is definitely gonna provide some of those opportunities. This time when he checks, I size up to the size of the pot, $8,000, and we get a quick fold from pocket 6s, so happy with how this one turned out. Things are going very well. Let's see if we can keep it going in this one. Charles opens in early position and I get pocket queens in the blinds. I raise it up and he calls. Heads up out of position to a flop of 9-4 deuce with 2 clubs. With my exact hand, I think checking or betting big are the best options. This isn't really a situation where I would want to bet small. This time I decide to check and he checks it back. Turn card is the 7 of spades. Once again, I check it and this time he bets half pot. Now, check raising really doesn't make any sense, but folding is obviously out of the question, so that only leaves one option. I make the call, and we see the 7 of clubs on the river, pairing the board and bringing in the possible front door flush. However, I don't think it's likely he's got that because he probably would have bet the flop, and I've also got the queen of clubs, which makes it a little less likely. Anyway, I check it over a 3rd time, and this time he bets $6,600. Seems like we're either in really good shape or he's got us crushed, so I make the call, and he was bluffing, so we take down another healthy sized pot, and things are going very well so far. Shortly after that hand, this one comes up where Garrett opens to 1200, straddle is on once again, and I'm on the button with king queen. Could go either way with a hand like this. This time I decided to just call, as does Dustin in the small blind. So the three of us are going to a flop, which comes Jack 9-7. I've got 2 overs and a straight draw to the nuts. Aside from that, not much going on, but it is a board that's going to favor me fairly often after calling a raise on the button. So when it checks to me, I bet small, good things can happen. Dustin calls and Garrett folds. The turn is one of those good things as it comes a king, improving me to top pair. Now it's time to switch from bluffing to value betting mode. So when Dustin checks, I bet $4,000, and once again he makes the call. I think he's got a pair and a draw of some sort at this point. So when the river comes the 4 of diamonds and he checks it to me once again, I want to continue going for value, but because I don't think he has a very strong hand, I decide to size down a little bit, betting $4,500, hoping to get a crying call from any jack or perhaps a 9. If we get check raised, that would definitely suck, but after he doesn't seem too happy with the situation, we can eliminate that as a possibility. Now we're just hoping he calls, and sure enough, after about a minute, he does toss it in. I turn it over and we win, so couldn't have asked for a better start to this Friday game. In the following hand, Bill opens to 1200. I think the 400 was just permanent at this point, so playing 100, 200, 400. I'm in the big blind with pocket 9s, and if I'm being honest, I think calling is totally fine on paper, but against a player who's playing a lot of hands and we're semi-short-handed, pocket 9s is just ahead almost always, and re-raising seems like the more clear option. But the game was really big and I was a little bit timid, so I decided to just call. Again, I don't think it's a huge mistake or anything, but under normal circumstances, I feel like I would have raised more often than not. Anyway, I call, as does Dustin in the straddle, and the three of us go to a flop of 6-5-3. Action checks to Bill, who bets small, and now with my exact hand, I think a check raise is totally fine. Doing it with small over pairs is usually best because we can use protection against over cards. And this is also a board where I don't expect Bill to be super strong on, so I do make it 4,000 to go. Dustin cold calls my check raise, and Bill calls as well, so it seems like both these guys must have something. River comes a deuce, now any 4 makes a straight. This time I decide to slow down and check, but somehow action checks around, so not entirely sure what's up with that. River comes a king, I check it again, and now Dustin bets, but he bets really small, around 1/3 the size of the pot. Bill folds, and now it's back on me. We're getting a really good price, and we beat a bunch of hands like 7-6, pocket 8s, pocket 7s, maybe a hand like ace-5. But there's also the question of, would he even bet hands like that? Maybe a lot of players wouldn't, but I've played with Dustin quite a bit, and I do think he's capable of betting hands like that. So with that in mind, I think we can't really do anything but call. Sure, we're often going to be losing against 2-pair or any possible straight, but with such an amazing price and only having to win a few times to make this profitable, I do toss in the money. Sure enough, this is not going to be one of those times as Dustin flips over 6-4 for a turn straight. Nice hand, man. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we arrive at the last interesting hand of this stream. The $800 double straddle is on in this one, and I look down at pocket 10s on the button, just a casual raise to $2,000. Mike calls in the straddle, and Bill defends from his double straddle as he should. Three of us go into a flop which comes down queen 9-5 with 2 diamonds. Not bad for pocket 10s, but when it checks to me, I don't really see a whole lot of point in betting, so I check it back. We see another 5 on the turn. This time Mike leads out for 2,200. Small bet, Bill folds, and when it's on me, I don't necessarily think he's bluffing per se, but if he is, we're still ahead, and we can still beat some smaller pairs that he might be betting for protection, so I make the call. Don't want to give him credit for a better hand just yet. River card's an 8, and this time he checks. I think at this point it's clear that we've got the best hand, but not really sure if there's worse that we can get value from. Unfortunately, we check back and beat ace-9 suited, which perhaps is one of those hands that would have called a river bet, but such is life. We end up taking down what is technically a small pot, but there's still a bunch of money in it, so not a bad way to end the stream. And just like that, we end up winning around $64,000, which is tied with the biggest win I've ever had, and it couldn't have come at a better time after the very disappointing previous day. We're gonna get back to the Hustler in a minute, but real quick, I wanted to talk about a few things, and number one is that if you enjoyed this style of video, give Joey a shout out in the comments and let us know. If you guys are into it and there's a positive response, we'll do more like these in the future, despite them being, a lot more work than the other ones. And secondly, somewhat unrelated, Joey, if you could put a graphic right here somewhere next to my face saying that I'm going to Texas next week, September 15th through 19th, I believe. I'll be playing at the Lodge, and on the 16th, they're gonna have me on their 2550 live stream. So if you guys are interested, make sure to check that out. If not, you know the drill. I'm gonna summarize all that in the next video. But anyway, this recaps the last 3 days of poker. Let's get back to real-time Mariano at Hustler.
All right, guys, so here we are with the one and only Garrett. How'd you feel about today?
It was a lot of fun today, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Sometimes poker's, it feels very easy, honestly. Even though 90% of the time it's not, I just made so many big hands today, and so
Yeah,
definitely one
you
of the
played a
really
bunch
fun
of
ones.
them. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to like going back and seeing what you had half the time.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask, a bunch of people who watch my channel play like smaller games like this.
Yeah, of course.
What's a good piece of advice you'd give to like 1-3 or 2-5 players who are looking to go to the next level?
Yeah, you know, I would say my first piece of advice isn't so fun or whatever. It's that, like, making poker your primary income source is just a very tough gig.
Yeah.
It's just really, really stressful. And so someone playing at that level, I assume if they did make that their primary income source, that'd be the situation for a while. So my first piece of advice is kind of boring and not fun. It would be have an alternative source of income.
Yeah.
Play poker for profit. Work on your game, be as good as you can, but needing to rely on it for rent to eat is a very stressful gig. However, not fun advice that is.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I think that's it for today. Just
Okay.
wanted to include you in the video because I know a bunch of fans. You know.
For sure, yeah. Whenever you need me.
All right, man.
Good luck, guys. Yeah.
I got Garrett's number.
I hope he likes nudes.
Hello. How's it going, man? Hi. Good, I won tonight. I was in for 50. I cashed out for this much. So, not bad.
All right, so tonight we won 64K. Not bad. I was in for 50, out for 114. I really didn't play like super well or anything, but that was just an effect of like how big the game was. I was pretty nervous and I think it showed. And I was really timid with a lot of decisions, but luckily I got some hands and took home a much needed win after getting my ass beat on these streams for a while. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this particular video. I know it was like really different than the other ones. You know, if you guys are into it, maybe we'll do more like this. We could put Joey to work. But anyways, as always, thank you guys for the support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.
do 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 do